Moving on to the Michael Tribe article. So what you're gonna find it is a bit of definitions in there and a lot of explanations on short run average cost curves and long run average cost curves and how that relates to protectionism and that. So for your sake, knowing the graphs are not that important. Yes, you are welcome to regurgitate them and try to formulate a discussion, but the gist of the graph must be done in like a line or two. It's not trying to explain the graph in depth, so that's not the main thing. Our main thing is to see, okay, what are the reasons for allowing for protecting infant industries and that? What are the conditions that are they face so that you can enforce some tariff in some form? So this idea of infant industry, it was popular, and to a degree today it's still popular, but it got discredited in the 1990s. The whole idea is from the World Trade Organization, everybody belonging to these trade organizations was the idea that, okay, we're gonna try to enforce free trade amongst all countries. And the problem with this is a lot of the countries who did this were trying to force this type of concept of free trade, or those guys that had the biggest say. Initially, prior to the 1990s, they were famous for using this infant industry as an excuse for them to apply protectionism or to apply tariff. So now we find that now when the developing countries or the African countries that are being gone through the process of colonialization and now wanting to establish their markets and facing all the problems they have in their markets, they now being told, well, you can't really use it. Protectionism doesn't work, or the world is moving to free trade. There's all these trade models that show that free trade is the best, so we should go and do this and jump onto this. But their markets aren't established in any sense, so they now are becoming disadvantaged because they're unable to apply uh, import substitution, which is, in other words, applying a tariff, substituting away from the imported good and moving to trying to produce the good locally. You should know that by now. In the end, this move to free trade didn't help them, and they ended up having a lot of deindustrialization, and they face some stagnation. And so, this is the issues that the developing countries or the African countries have faced. Yes, not all developing countries from Africa, but I think generally, if not majority of Africa, is developing countries. If you're able to know what a first world country in Africa, you're welcome to let me know. So what is infant industry? Another definition. You'll find there's maybe two, three definitions in this work. You are only obliged to quote one definition. Don't quote me five, six definitions. Just stick to one definition when you quote this. So this is the second definition we want to handle. So it's industrial activities that are undertaken for first time in the economy. So this is what. So when they talk about infant industries, we are referring to industrialization. So the general view is that, okay, we're only going to protect for a short while to allow ourselves to move from low productivity to a place where we can compete with the foreign firms. So it involves different type of policies and that trade policies. The main idea is to restrict imports. So how they do this, sometimes through their processes and through their tariffs and then what do they end up doing? The causes of what they do in terms of imposing these import tariffs and whatever other trade policy they do. In the result, the results of all this is that they have a exchange rate that is overvalued. They might have very nice protective, effective protection, so that's meaning very high rates, and it could also mean that domestic resource costs might have gone up. At the same time, through all these processes, they are distorting markets. They're distorting markets because they're not allowing the natural way of which the market operates to occur. Because with the tariffs, guess what is happening? It's a Canadian way. Somehow government getting involved. They're implying a policy. So this is not applying a neoclassical type of view, or even a classical type of view. So this obviously is just an issue that is just philosophical in a sense. If you're looking at distorted markets, because some people might argue what they are doing is trying to come to a point where the markets are no longer distorted, where they're able to compete in it. But to get where they need to get, they need to distort the markets by influencing prices through their tariffs. So apart from trade protection, the other ways they can tackle this to help with the infant industries is to have some investment incentives. This is either through grants or through tax reductions or credits. The other form to do this is through having some public sector support. So maybe there's some pre-investment studies or market studies to help them better identify what is happening in the market, how to tackle their production in this market, and then maybe in terms of the public sector helping with constructing advanced factories or providing the locations to produce those to build these factories in. And then also public sector could help with administrative obstacles, either reducing it or making it easier to get through these obstacles. So what has happened to these less developed countries? So initially when they jumped into the market, when they started trying to produce, they used a lot of import substitution policies. And what has shown is that this has failed for them. A reason why this has failed for them, we will look at that more in the regional economic integration. But the idea is now, because this has failed for them, a lot of people jump to the bandwagon. It's like, okay, free trade. This is probably going to work better for them. This is only because these when they applied these the high tariffs, it hasn't led to the same results, or the results that they expected. So, in a way to reflect why it has failed, what you end up finding is with these high tariffs, the production costs are still very high. The industry hasn't really grown; it's remained infant, and these are the issues they have faced. So now they've been told, okay, you need to look at this in terms of export promotion. Just instead of trying to block a product coming in and preventing the competition, you need to target in trying to find a product that you can ship overseas, that you can internationally compete with. And then there's even alternatives to export promotion. You have incentive programs, um, and a lot of these things that have shown that is what they're trying to do. I'm not going to look at what incentive programs is, but you have incentive programs over and above the export promotion. And what they're trying to say is, yeah, Asia has been able to grow in a really great way. Why aren't we able to copy them, or at least take for what is relevant in them, in what Asia has done or East Asia has done, and see how that has worked for Africa? And what is shown that even though they've tried to model East Asia through the export promotion style, it hasn't worked out for Africa. So this is how it led to this whole idea of incentive programs. And then you can look at all ideas of all these 4 or 5 examples that exist here for what are incentive programs. So let's move on to the literature part of that. That was just a building up the idea of why the need for infant industries, why infant industries hasn't worked for Africa. Well, we didn't really look at why, but we looked at, okay, it hasn't worked, and this is the consequences of why it hasn't worked. As I said, we'll discuss that more later in the regional economic integration. And now we left with the idea of, okay, let's move to the literature part. Okay, this is still the same article, it's not changed away from it. So what they've shown, especially for the manufacturing sector, if we look at sub-Saharan Africa, we find that the manufacturing sector is quite small or limited in size, and undeveloped. And the forms of industrial development across sub-Saharan varies. It's not exactly the same. And from what one would expect it in terms of the development of the industries, it hasn't exactly met those expectations. And we have seen, at least for the manufacturing sector, that there has been some positive growth, but this has only been for some countries and only for a period of time. So we haven't found that the whole of the sub-Saharan has prospered, and only a few of those countries has prospered. Why are we looking at sub-Saharan? As we all know, this is one of the least developed sectors, or sections or regions in Africa. So if you look at the industrial sector of sub-Saharan, it's mainly primary goods. And remember what we discussed earlier about primary goods. Other terms of trade favors manufacturing goods. So for them to grow, really, this has not been a really good thing. In terms of the potential development of exports or manufactures, it's very limited. For them to move into the manufacturing products and that, the problems that they face amongst their countries and neighboring countries, that a lot of them have the same range of goods and services. So you're going to be competing exactly with your neighbors when you're trying to go internationally. So you're trying to take your product overseas, and now you find that okay, my neighbors also has the same product, and in that case, then you're competing with your neighbor and internationally, and you might not grow. Now, obviously, a solution to this would have been maybe these countries teaming together and trying to produce the good together, a form of regional economic integration in a sense, and then trying to ship this product. And then it might have worked really better because maybe then they have a lot more expertise or more knowledge being shared and a bigger region to or bigger whole section for them to team together and then try to build bigger factories and in a sense be even more competitive. Other issues, and this is not new, is that Africa has a lot of political issues. So that you know of all the fighting that happens within the country and amongst countries, and it doesn't really help when you have political issues in terms of teaming up and working together. And then if you look at in terms of the economic institutions which help to develop the manufacturing goods or to help with the exporting of manufacturing goods, we find that they are very undeveloped. So they're lacking really much in really good economic institutions. So what is the standard setup in terms of sub-Saharan Africa? So when it comes to capital goods, they're trying to keep tariffs as low as possible on capital goods. Unfortunately, or what this is the aim of this low tariffs is to influence investment. And on the other side, on final goods, to protect the markets, what they're trying to do on their final goods is to have high tariffs, just to encourage growth in their own domestic market. So that's what sub-Saharan African looks at. What we're going to do now is go again, another definition after discussing all that context of what sub-Saharan Africa was about. And then we have another definition, it's called by Westphal. This was declared in 1981. And his definition says it's a newly established type of activity for which the economy's existing endowment of skills and human capital does not provide immediate technology mastery. So any activity that exists in the market or the economy where there's no expertise yet. So what you want to do then in that case is to protect the industry until you're able to get this expertise or this technology mastery. So this is his way of defining infant industry. You're only aiding it until you are able to technology master the skills that you need for this industry. Um, so Then we need to look at, okay, when you're jumping in this, what are the benefits of going through this industry and trying to promote it and trying to protect it? If the benefits exceeds the cost, then you want to go in and say, okay, we're definitely going to protect this industry. It's no use to jump into this and you don't have the skill set, the experience, the technological mastery in it, and you're saying, okay, we'll get this technological mastery, but then you gain it, but you're still losing out even when you gain it, and because you're already losing out now by imposing a tariff, and then you're losing out in the future. So what you do then in that case, you can't just say I'm going to protect this industry indefinitely, and just because you want to gain the skill set for these skills or activities in the economy you want to undertake, but you're not going to really gain against your competitors. So in that case, you don't want to actually then help or protect the industry at all. You want to say, okay, no, that's not the case. You want to only apply these tariffs on the idea that when you obtain this technological mastery or this skill set or become very competitive in this market, if you're going to be able to be better than your competitors, might not be able to be better than competitors now, but if I add up what I'm going to do in the future and it's better than all the losses I'm going to take now, then it's fine. Then we're going to protect this industry.